Nature is all around us. Birds tweeting, trees lasting, winds blowing outside as I talk here today. We even have beautiful Mount Asama in our backyard. Nature is everywhere, and we never question it. But today, I would like to reconsider the definition of nature. So I would like to pose one question. What is nature? Some people will say it's a resource. It can be converted into food, electricity, or anything that needs in our daily life. And if we convert the value of nature as something of monetary value, it's very easy to understand. Some people will say, nature is beautiful, and it enriches our life. When we hear the word nature, we think of natural world heritage like this, Yakushima, Japan. This place even became a motto of the movie Princess Mononoke. Some people will say, nature is something that we need to protect. So our actions are important to protect the beautiful natural environment. Probably you guys have seen these kind of marks, environmentally friendly, on detergent or this kind of plastic-free products. Yeah, it's of course important to be environmentally friendly. Nature can have economic value or aesthetic value, or people even think about protecting the environment. And these three seems quite different definitions, but it has something in common that underlies in all those definitions. Nature is something that is separated from humans. As Andre said, it's an absence of human. That's quite close, I think. We're not part of nature. According to Oxford Dictionary, definition of nature is all the plants, animals, and things that exist in the universe that are not made by people. But is that actually true? Have we always been separated from nature? So let's consider our daily life in the level, atomic level. Everything in the universe is made out of atoms, and atoms move around and then change the shape of an object. And all of this sounds like chemistry or physics, and it's too difficult for me. So let's just make it simple. Think about what you ate for breakfast. For me, I ate rice and miso soup as usual. Rice comes from a field consisting of mud, microorganisms, and insects. When a tiny grain of rice is dropped on the earth on spring, it becomes a sprout. And as it gets sunlight and rain, it grows, and it bears thousands of rice grain in autumn. It comes to our table, and we eat them. Nature becomes a part of us. Rice becomes a part of us. We consist of molecules that comes from nature, which means we consist of nature. Thus, we are nature. So let's take an example of breathing. So everyone, let's take a deep breath right now. Breathe in and breathe out. Thank you. So right now, when you took a breath, how many molecules of like oxygens or nitrogen you took into your lungs? Any guess? A billion? Trillion? Okay, it's a good number. It's actually 25 trillion of molecules. And I don't think anyone heard of 6 trillion. So 25 trillion is this. 25 with 21 zero behind it. So even right now, when you're listening to this, the part of your bodies are keep changing. And when we think in this way, our body is not our own anymore. It comes from nature, and it goes back to nature. Despite of this fact, why do we separate ourselves from nature? I believe it's rooted in the advancement of technology. Human was born in 200,000 years ago, and it's a long history. But we didn't have technology in 90% of our human history. So people needed to come up with ways to adapt the environment and live together with the environment. But 250 years ago, Industrial Revolution happened. And we suddenly get the modern technology, and we're able to produce things at the unprecedented speed. Now we have the technology, we are less likely to be affected by the environment. So all the traditional practices that were built up in all the human history is not really required anymore, and is replaced by the modern technology to modify the environment rather than adapting to it. In the 21st century, we're losing control over nature, which we thought that we gained through technology. Right now, we're facing crisis of human life on Earth, climate change. Storm that used to come once in decade scale comes every year around the world, and every summer becomes hottest ever recorded. It is said that in 2100, Tokyo, Amsterdam, Shanghai, and part of Bangkok would be underwater, according to a website of Before the Flood. What we do to the environment to harm them will come back to us in a different form to harm us as well in some way. We all know that we have to do something to solve this. And all the world leaders and good people are trying better to solve this by discussing in the international conference or living environmentally friendly life. But we cannot still solve climate change. Why? I think it is because we're focusing too much on the surface cause, carbon dioxide. But the true cause is deep rooted in our mind. Externalization of nature that led to the action of destroying the environment. If the problem is externalization, we can internalize nature to solve the problem. But how can we internalize nature? Our ancestors have hints because they lived 90% of history without our modern technology or fossil fuels. Oneness had been a large part of living principle in old days around the world. Oneness comes from a notion that everything in the world, including us and all the stuff here and everything in the universe, comes from one source. When we think of the beginning of the universe, we all and everything else in the universe comes from one event, which is Big Bang. So when we think this, part of our body might contain part of the old stars, or you might be breathing same carbon molecules as Aristotle did. When we think in this way, trees, stars, and our ancestors, and we are all connected. And this is the concept of oneness. Also, our ancestors were inventing culture by adapting to nature, which used to be called vernacular culture. And I experienced one of this culture here in Karizawa. One day, I participated in the local miso making session. Miso is a Japanese fermented seasoning. When I participated, we used all the local ingredients and also soybeans that neighbor harvested. We did everything by hand, starting from steaming the soybeans and also mixing them with salt and malted rice. At the time, one of the elderly told me that this event has been happening over generations. Every year, they make miso together and share them all together. I felt the sense of oneness in these small local practices. These kind of local practices that has the sense of oneness can be found across the world. And we can, of course, learn from them. But it's difficult for us to completely live life like our grandparents. So what could we do? We're consuming products that come from deforested rainforests or fossil fuel-intensive industries or farms. But we can still apply the principle of respecting nature and valuing what we have right now and make the best out of it. For example, you can make your own bag using your school t-shirts that is not worn anymore. Or you can mend your favorite socks rather than throwing it away. These can start very small, but before you throw away and buy something new, think about what you can do using what you already have. Practicing vernacular culture and creating by ourselves rather than consuming could, of course, reduce CO2 emission. But the point here is not just reducing CO2 emission. When we practice these kind of small practices in daily life, we get an opportunity to stop and take a breath, take a deep breath, to think about what kind of life we want to live and what kind of future we want to imagine. This change might not change the numerical figure of CO2, but the change of mindset could make anything possible. The true process of solving this problem, climate change, lies in the change of the mindset, internalization of nature within ourselves. These practices can enrich our life by reconnecting people, nature, and each of us. It has been people who passed down the wisdom of life to harmoniously live with nature. And it will be people who are going to lead this change to tackle this crisis by starting by updating the perception towards nature. Thank you so much.